Hello everyone, Kyle here from Wide Awake PH, and in today's episode, we'll be talking about why you should buy an espresso machine. Well, for the first reason, espresso machines are cool. So if you're anything like me and you like mechanical objects, right? You appreciate the way they're designed, the way they're built, and to some extent, you also like reading about the history behind, products. And on top of all of that, you love coffee and you love espresso. Then espresso machines will be for you. You see, the world of espresso machines is very rich. From newer, more affordable options like the Flair 58, the Flair Pro, to something a little bit more old school like this, the E61 Lelit Mara, to something super high-tech like the decent DE1 espresso machine, or maybe a commercial option like the machines you see in commercial cafes. There's something in this world for you. You see, for people like me and coffee enthusiasts and espresso enthusiasts in particular find so appealing about the world of espresso machines is they use different methodologies to create espresso. You see, broadly speaking, there are two kinds of espresso machines. One is a manual espresso machine, and the other is something like this, a semi-automatic espresso machine. So what do we mean when we say an espresso machine is manual? Well, from the name, you know that it comes in two types, right? So one is it's really completely manual, meaning it's a direct lever machine. It requires the use of your hand or the power of your arm to generate the pressure needed to create an espresso. The other is a spring lever machine. So there's a spring inside the espresso machine. When you push the lever down, you compress the spring, and as it decompresses, that spring creates the pressure needed to create an espresso. And on to the next category, which is the semi-automatic espresso machine. These machines rely on pumps to generate the pressure needed. So how espresso machines create and generate pressure is just one interesting aspect of espresso machines and how they're so different and diverse. Well, if you're a machine enthusiast, I guess, like me, or an espresso enthusiast, what's really cool is you can examine each different espresso machine on the market and look at how do they create pressure, how do they generate heat, how do they maintain heat, what does the design look like, what's the user interface of that machine, and so on. And you can see from here that your choice of espresso machine will reflect your tastes and your individuality. The second reason you might be interested in an espresso machine is if you love espresso and milk-based beverages. So if you're that kind of person, then you need an espresso machine at home because it will allow you to really explore the flavor spectrum present in the world of espresso. So what do I mean by this? Well, you see, in the modern world of espresso, there are two kinds of espresso. You have the more traditional one and you have the more modern approach. So for the traditional one, what does that mean? Well, you'll have a conical burr grinder creating a more bimodal grind distribution, and then you will pull that coffee that you ground on a machine like this, which pulls it at a pretty high pressure profile of 9 bar all the way. And what that will make is a very chocolatey, punchy, comforting cup of coffee that most likely you're already drinking or you're familiar with. And the second kind of espresso is the more modern approach. So what cafes will usually do, or espresso enthusiasts will do, is they'll have a flat burr grinder creating a more unimodal sort of grind distribution. And then they'll pull it on a machine where they can play around with the pressure. And usually they will pull that coffee with a lower pressure. And the shot will be pulled faster for clarity, right? So it's a very different kind of espresso where you can really perceive the taste notes, but it's very intense as compared to a filter coffee. Lastly, if you love milk-based beverages, then you really need an espresso machine. right? So what if you're the type of person who wants to explore the different kinds of milk? Soy milk, oat milk, even the normal kind of milk, but the different grades of milk, and see how those milks interact with different coffees. Then you really need an espresso machine at home. The third reason why an espresso machine might be right for you is because you love to tinker with coffee, right? So what if you're the type of person who looks at coffee and approaches coffee more as a hobby rather than just a means of waking up in the morning? Well, if this sounds like you, then an espresso machine is perfect. Because if you have an espresso machine at home and a good grinder, then you get to really play around with the tasting outcomes of your coffee, right? So like rather than relying on your neighborhood barista for the kind of coffee they like and they like to serve, well, at home, you get to really control what kind of coffee do I want to have. You get to choose the beans, you get to choose the grind size, you get to choose the length of the shot, you get to choose the kind of milk you want to add. You get to choose the kind of sugar you want to put into your drink. All of this is in your control. So if this sounds like you, then an espresso machine is definitely for you. The fourth reason why an espresso machine might be right for you is if you love entertaining family and friends with coffee, right? So if you really want to create that kind of home cafe atmosphere in your home when you have friends and family over, then you really need an espresso machine, right? There's nothing quite like it, being able to consistently prepare lots and lots of drinks for your guests with an espresso machine and being able to serve them a really great tasting long black or a really great tasting latte, right? And you get to show off your barista skills. That's really cool. The fifth and last point is an espresso machine might be right for you if you have the budget to spend on it. So you see, yes, you can buy an affordable machine, but you also need a grinder to go along with it, right? And I'm not talking about a manual hand grinder. Most likely, to make this sustainable and less friction for you day to day, you need an electric grinder. And these things need money. And on top of that, of course, you need to buy beans, good beans to feed your grinder, to feed your machine. So it requires a certain amount of financial commitment as well if you want to enter into the world of espresso. So that's it for today's episode. Thank you so much for watching. Like and subscribe, and see you again next time.